by Tyler Durden from ZeroHedge.com. New Trump executive order targets Clinton-linked individuals, lobbyists, and perhaps Uranium One. The Trump administration quietly issued an executive order, EO, last Thursday, which allows for the freezing of U.S.-housed assets belonging to foreign individuals or entities deemed serious human rights abusers, along with government officials and executives of foreign corporations, current or former, found to have engaged in corruption, which includes the misappropriation of state assets, the expropriation of private assets for personal gain, and corruption related to government contracts or the extraction of natural resources. That puts Hillary right on the list for the Uranium One. Furthermore, anyone in the United States who aids or participates in said corruption or human rights abuses by foreign parties is subject to frozen assets, along with any U.S. corporation who employs foreigners deemed to have engaged in corruption on behalf of the company. In fact, anyone in the world who has materially assisted, sponsored, or provided financial, material, or technological support for or goods or services to foreigners targeted by the executive order is subject to frozen assets. The EO, based on the 2016 Global Human Rights Accountability Act, immediately added 13 foreign individuals to a list of specially designated nationals, SDN, maintained by the Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, several of whom have ties to the Clintons, the Clinton Foundation, or Clinton Associates. Details below. Moreover, the Treasury Department sanctioned an additional 39 people for a total of 52 under the new order, including the son of Russia's prosecutor general. The order reads, I, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, find that the prevalence of severity of human rights abuse and corruption that have their source in whole or in substantial part outside the United States, such as those committed or directed by persons listed in the annex to this order, have reached such scope and gravity that they threaten the stability of international political and economic systems. Last week's executive order could have serious implications for D.C. lobbyists who provide goods and services, example lobbying services to despots, corrupt foreign politicians, or foreign organizations engaging in the crimes described in the executive order. Virtually every lobbyist in D.C. has got to be in a cold sweat over the scope of this EO, said an attorney consulted in the matter who wishes to remain anonymous. And because the phrase person, quote, means an individual or entity in the order, any U.S. organization which merely employs a foreigner engaging in the listed offenses is also subject to frozen assets. Consider what would happen if Apple, say, employed a foreign national who bribed a PRC official for government approvals. How about a hypothetical case of a company like Northrop or Boeing, where an employee or consultant who is a foreign national bribes a Saudi official to direct government purchases of airplanes and military equipment? At least some or all of these assets could be frozen. Now consider that if reports from the Hill are accurate, an FBI mole deep within the Russian uranium industry uncovered evidence that Russian nuclear officials had routed millions of dollars to the U.S. designed to benefit former President Bill Clinton's charitable foundation during the time Secretary of State Clinton served on a government body that provided a favorable decision to Moscow, the Uranium One approval. a deal which would eventually grant the Kremlin over 20% of America's uranium supply, right around the time Bill Clinton also collected $500,000 for a Moscow speech, as detailed by author Peter Schweitzer's book Clinton Cash and the New York Times in 2015. The Russians were compromising American contractors in the nuclear industry with kickbacks and extortion threats, all of which raised legitimate national security concerns. And none of that evidence got aired before the Obama administration made those decisions. A person who worked on the case told The Hill, speaking on condition of anonymity for fear of retribution by U.S. or Russian officials. The Hill. The same FBI informant claims to have video evidence showing Russian agents with briefcases full of bribe money related to the controversial Uranium One deal. Okay, I'm sure we've heard this one.
Welcome back to Hannity. So as we were tonight, The Hill's John Solomon out with another huge, massive bombshell story of the FBI's investigation into Hillary Clinton's private email server. According to this report, Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe, he issued an email declaring that the Clinton investigation has been given a, quote, special status and would be handled by a small team of high-ranking FBI officials. And there's more tonight on the Russian bribery case. Reuters now has released the name of the FBI informant, the one that had the NDA lifted. John is also reporting that tonight the Democratic senator from the state of California, Dianne Feinstein, wants to speak with him. Joining us now, The Hill's John Solomon, along with reporter Sarah Carter. I don't even know where to...
Okay.
You both addressed this, John.
What's happening to the sound?
Thinking, oh, he doesn't have any information, when I know that's a lie.
Yeah, no, you're right, Sean. We have seen the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, trying to say there's no connection between Uranium One and the Mikoyan Russian bribery case. We've seen the Deputy Attorney General say that, and now we saw two anonymous officials in a Reuters story saying that. And what we'll say back to that is I think people should tune into The Hill next week. We'll show people the real...
I don't know why the sound is not coming through.
Bernstein, by the time this is all over. And Sarah, let me get your take on this. You know who the FBI informant is. You both know. You have both talked to him. We know who the attorney is. How extensive, they're trying to downplay what he has. Sarah, how extensive is it? And what release of his name?
He's very concerned about the release of his name. He did not authorize that, although he was contacted by the reporter from Reuters.
Well, it seems like it's having difficulty, but in a report by Tucker Carlson, a former longtime executive of now defunct D.C. lobbying firm, the Podesta Group, who has been interviewed extensively by FBI Special Counsel Robert Mueller, claims that Tony Podesta was basically part of the Clinton Foundation, frequently meeting with the charity to discuss the Uranium One deal. Meanwhile, Tony's DNC operative brother, John Podesta, reportedly recommended that the Podesta Group hire David Adams, Hillary Clinton's chief advisor, at the State Department, giving them a direct liaison between the group's Russian clients and Hillary Clinton's State Department. Hypothetically, if the Uranium One deal is deemed corrupt by the Trump administration and Russian nuclear officials indeed routed millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation and Tony Podesta lobbied on behalf of the deal for the Clinton Foundation, it stands to reason that this executive order could freeze the U.S. housed assets of quite a few individuals. Of note, assets can be frozen with no prior warning, as Trump has declared a national emergency due to the scope and gravity of the threat posed by said individuals. Yeah, it seems like they're in trouble. Let's just see if this one works a little bit so we can hear it. No, I guess. Oh yeah, here we go. No, it's not really playing. Well, you get the drift that these people actually were involved with cutting a deal. So the bottom line is that this could actually take place where...
Before last night's show was even over, we got an email from a man with direct personal knowledge of that story. The man, whose name we can't reveal for the time being, is a former senior employee of the Podesta Group. He worked there for years. He said he was motivated to contact us by the disgust he felt watching media coverage of the Russia story. Not only were most reporters getting it wrong, he said, they were getting it backward. The Russians were, in fact, deeply involved in American politics.
Well,
hours ago. The story he told us is astonishing. We'll be following up on it, confirming more of it, and bringing you details throughout this week and after. But first, here's an overview of... Media reports describe Paul Manafort as a central figure in the Russia investigation due to the several months he spent as Donald Trump's campaign chairman. According to our source, that's only half true. Manafort is indeed at the center of this investigation, but not because of his ties to Trump. In fact, Paul Manafort spent years working with the Podesta Group on behalf of Russian government interests. That relationship extends back to at least 2011, when our source claims Manafort had dinner in Washington with both Podestas, Tony and John. In the years following, our source says he saw Paul Manafort in the Podesta Group offices, quote, all the time, at least once a month. Manafort was not there to socialize. He was representing Russian business and political interests who sought to influence Capitol Hill, Hillary Clinton's State Department, and the Obama administration. Our source describes Manafort bringing what he called a parade of Russian oligarchs up to the Congress, where they met with members and their staffs. But the central effort to extend Russian influence was focused on the executive branch, the Obama administration. The vehicle through which Paul Manafort worked for the Russians was a shell group called the European Center for a Modern Ukraine. Now, the group supposedly was based in Belgium, but it had no actual offices there. It had, in fact, only 2 employees, both of them based in Ukraine. Their telephone number in Brussels rang in Kiev. It was a sham. Yet it did have a presence here in Washington. The European Center for Modern Ukraine was a major client of the Podesta Group. Now, why did the Russians choose the Podesta Group? Well, because both Podestas were close to the Clintons, and Hillary was then Secretary of State. She could get things done for the Podesta's Russian clients. It was influence peddling, the most obvious kind. For example, our source says that at John Podesta's recommendation, his brother Tony hired a man named David Adams. Now, before joining the Podesta...
Well, I don't know why it did that, but as you can see, that basically Obama could be going down too with this. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and again, thank you so much for watching.